Welcome to the Records Context and Analysis series. My name is Jenny Hansen. I'm an accredited genealogist specializing in Scandinavia. Today I will be taking you through a records analysis exercise in church records through Protestant Europe. As a disclaimer, the content of this video, as well as the thoughts, views, and opinions expressed herein belong solely to the creator and do not necessarily reflect the views of FamilySearch International and RootsTech. In other words, this is my opinion. When we talk about Protestant Europe, it's mostly the northern regions. Germany gets a bit confusing because there is not a hard and fast rule about where the division is for Protestant and Catholic Germany. The church records in these areas are all similar in structure and the information that has been gathered. My examples today are going to focus on records from Denmark, Copenhagen to be exact, but don't worry about any potential language barriers. I'll do the translating for you as we look at the record examples. You just need to follow along enough to be able to see what kind of information is listed in the different church records. I won't even be talking about how to locate the specific records. Rather, today's meant to be just a demonstration of what kind of information can be found in the records. I want to show you how I look at a record, what I learned from it, and where to go next. Hopefully this will help you to understand how to approach the records and how to be more efficient in your own researching. This is a book of christenings for the Trinitatis Parish in Copenhagen for the year 1843. This is a really large urban parish. The records that we're going to study is for Alfred Theodor Svensson. Let's zoom in and take a closer look at his christening record. The first column is the date of birth for the subject. It reads the 24th of July, 1843. Next, we get to the subject's name. This record is for Alfred Theodor Svensson. Next, we see his christening date. He was christened the 27th of August in the church. Christenings usually take place within a few weeks of an infant's birth. However, there's always exceptions to this. So next we learn the name of the parents. Sometimes this column will only state the father's name, which can be very frustrating, but it just depends on the time period and the clerk's preferences. This record states that the parents are Anders Ditlev Svensson, a bricklayer, and his wife Johanna Olsen. It then gives the family's address. The next large column on the second page is for the name of the witnesses. This record states that the parents are the witnesses for the christening. This is not a typical situation in rural or smaller areas, but in this very large, very urban parish in the mid-1800s, the parents could serve as a witness for a christening. So now what? I always want to find a complete family group. So when I know one person in the family and the name of the parents, I can compile that whole family group. I make a list of what I want to learn, and then I move through that checklist. So today I want to know all of the children, and I want to know the parents' marriage information. I also need to make certain that I search the burial records. There may be children who died young that are not listed in any of the records except for the burials, and I also want to know who I'm going to be able to search for as an adult. So my first step in this project is going to be to look for siblings of Alfred Theodor Svensson. Since I know his parents' name, I'm going to look for christening records that list Johanna Olsen and Anders Ditlev Svensson. This is a christening record in a neighboring parish in Copenhagen for the same family group. Remember that especially when you work in urban areas, families may have attended the closest church, not just the church for their geographical jurisdiction where they lived. So let's zoom in on this record for Carl Ludwig August Svensson. It holds some surprise information that really changed my assumptions for this family group. The first column of this record states that the subject was born on June 17, 1847. The subject's name is Carl August Svensson. He was christened in the church the 10th of September, 1847. His parents are listed as the bricklayer Anders Ditlev Svensson's wife, Johanna Olsen, and the bricklayer Carl Ludwig August Jan. An address is given for this family. Okay, this information was such a surprise. So let's read the rest of the record, and then we'll come back and analyze everything that we just found out. The large column on the second page tells us the name of the witnesses. So I noted these names for my records because the witnesses are always somehow connected to the family. The notes in the final column are also really interesting for this particular entry. A lot of times that notes space is empty, but this time we got some good information. So this small box reads, "This child is illegitimate. The mother of the child is in a conjugal relationship with the bricklayer Karl Ludwig August Jan." This record gives me a lot to consider. I need to learn about this relationship between Johanna Olsen and Karl Jan. I also really want to know what happened to Anders Svensson. If everybody knew that this was not his biological child, what was going on? So I'm going to leave that checklist that I just made, and I'm going to explore this situation further. So I searched in the burial records to find any possible information about Anders Svensson. Here is his burial record, so let's zoom in and have a closer look. Here's where the family group really got interesting. The first column of the burial record tells me the date of death. Again, these parishes are huge, so this is just one of many pages of burials for the year, so we just have an abbreviation on the burial information. But looking at the top of the columns, I'm able to get everything I need. So the 23 in that first column indicates that Anders died the 23rd of July in 1853. That's 5 years after the child Karl Svensson was born. Anders was buried the 25th of July. The column for the subject's name states that he was believed to be Anders Ditlev Svensson. The next column, which gives a brief description of the individual, states that he was brought inside from the garden dead. He had been living in the charity hospital. The last column states he was 45 years old at the time he died. So this record helps me solve a little bit of the mystery of this family. We don't know exactly how long Anders had been living in that hospital. So I'm going to add to my research checklist the possibility of an 1850 census entry. I suspect that he may have been either severely injured or somehow mentally incompetent or unwell enough to live as an independent adult. There's also the possibility that he had abandoned his family and all of a sudden reappeared. So I'm going to look at the church records for a few more pieces of evidence to kind of help me prove this suspicion. I looked in the church records to learn about Johanna Olsen, and sure enough, I found a marriage record for her and Karl Ludwig August Jan, the father of that mystery baby. So let's look at this record pretty closely. The marriage record for 1854, which is the year after Anders Svensson died, lists the following information. The bachelor Karl Ludwig August Jan, a bricklayer, age 44 years old, and the widow Johanna Svensson, born Olsen, age 43 years old, had their engagement announced the 21st of October in 1854. So that's the information from those first two columns. The first talks about the groom, the second talks about the bride. The next page, the first column, lists the bondsmen, or the witnesses to the marriage. Again, these are people that are typically tied to at least the couple, if not to the greater family unit. It then goes on to state in those last columns, the couple married the 1st of December in the church. So this record helps clarify my guesses about the family. I see that after the death of Anders, his widow married the man she had likely been cohabitating with for several years. So what now? I have made some really big assumptions that I've got to confirm, so I went and made a new checklist. What I really need to see happen is finding these individuals in 1850. Luckily for me, that happens to be a census year in Denmark. So I've made a new checklist. I also want to know if there are other children born to this second couple. So once I complete this list, I can move back to my original checklist and complete the family group for both portions of this family. I hope that this quick dip through a few church records has given you an idea of the excellent information you can find in your own research. This is definitely a sensational situation. You never come across things like this once in a blue moon. But just by using the church records, I found so much information about a seemingly nondescript family living in a major urban area in Europe. Church records are an excellent building block upon which we can base our family research. I wish you all the luck with your own research and have fun. May you find other really cool stories for your family too.